Cheyenne leadership. Any culture that retains its history and memories by telling and retelling stories and passing them down from one generation to the next is called oral history. This is an educational program covering the Cheyenne leadership. This program will explain the transition of leadership, beginning with chiefs and societies, through the present-day tribal government that was established with the Indian Reorganization Act of 1934, also known as Wheeler-Howard Act. We will also discuss the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the Northern Cheyenne Tribal Constitution of 1935, the Northern Cheyenne Constitutional Amendments of 1960 and 1995, and the Northern Cheyenne Reservation districts, and the coexistence of traditional and contemporary leadership. Today, we will be listening to 9 respected Cheyenne tribal members who were interviewed for their knowledge and expertise about the history and culture of the Cheyenne people. Leroy Pine, also known as Mountain Lion, is an enrolled member of the Northern Cheyenne tribe. Mr. Pine is a chief of the Northern Cheyenne tribe. Charles Butch Sooktis, also known as Sand Roads, is an enrolled member of the Northern Cheyenne tribe. Mr. Sooktis is a member of the Elkhorn Scrapers Society. Charles Little Old Man, also known as Medicine Beaver, is a member of the Northern Cheyenne tribe. Mr. Little Old Man is a member of the Kit Fox Society. Rubie Sooktis, also known as Flying Woman, is an enrolled member of the Northern Cheyenne tribe. Miss Sooktis is an Elkhorn Scrapers Society sister. Linwood Tallbow, also known as Young is a member of the Northern Cheyenne tribe. Mr. Tallbow is a headsman of the Dog Soldiers Society. Eugene Little Coyote, also known as Morning Killer, is a member of the Northern Cheyenne tribe. Mr. Little Coyote is the current president of the Northern Cheyenne tribe. Cavin Wilson, also known as Burt Nose, is an enrolled member of the Northern Cheyenne tribe. Mr. Wilson is currently the Bighorn County Attorney. Keith Beartusk, also known as White Eagle, is an enrolled member of the Northern Cheyenne tribe. Mr. Beartusk is currently the Regional Director for the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Dr. Henrietta Mann, also known as the Woman Who Comes to Offer Prayer, is an enrolled member of the Southern Cheyenne tribe. Dr. Mann holds a PhD in Native American Studies. After being banished for 4 years, Sweet Medicine returned to the Cheyenne people. He brought information and guidance that was used to establish the chiefs and societies.
The Chief Organization is an organization that was established by Sweet Medicine. In the beginning, he created the Cheyenne Chiefs, and then he created the societies. The purpose of the Chiefs Organization is to take care of their people.
The chief's role was really a real important part of our tribal government, and it was they made all the rules, the decisions, and the societies carried these. They did the action. The chiefs were the ones that decided on our ceremonies and everything that pertained to the Cheyenne tribe. And since we became an IRA government, we kind of lost that. The chiefs no longer perform that role. Now a lot of it is performed by the individual societies. See, each one of the societies have a role.
The traditional form of government, as I've been taught, chiefs were appointed by other chiefs. They were recognized for their leadership qualities. They're supposed to be like models, standards of how a Cheyenne should be. Very modest, very caring, very giving. And oftentimes chiefs were much older people, not very young. But they had high ethical standards and values, and they were recognized as such. By that time in their age, they were very accomplished leaders. They were called on by their people and appointed because of their goodness.
The Council of 44 is the oldest form of government of the Cheyenne people.
The Council of 44 is the traditional governing body of the Cheyenne people that was established by Sweet Medicine. He was taught how to organize us for tribal self-government within the sacred mountain, Bear Butte. After having been in that particular mountain for 4 years, came out and he organized us in terms of our chiefs, our warrior societies, and the Council of 44. The Council of 44 is made up of 40 individuals selected and chosen from each of the 10 bands of the Cheyenne people. Incorporated in that Council of 44 are 4 chiefs. We call them principal chiefs. The Council of 44 are not necessarily leaders that we might look at leaders in a contemporary sense. They were selected to be servants of the people. The Council of 44 is referred to as the Council of 44 Peace Chiefs. Once a person was selected as a chief, even if they had been very strong military leaders, they gave up their military leadership to for that of maintaining peaceful relationships within the community, within themselves, with other people.
The Council of 44 does not have a document that says this is a government recognized by the federal government. Their recognition comes from a sacred beginning. They have that root of the early beginnings of the Northern Cheyenne tribe. The Council of 44 are the oldest. As long as they're Northern Cheyenne people, there always will be a Council of 44. The Council of 44 still have the freedom of helping the people. The selection process of new chiefs is performed by the existing chiefs. They decide among themselves who will remain a chief and who is to replace a chief, either by appointment or by hereditary lineage.
Every 10 years, as it was taught to us, we come together and we reevaluate all the chiefs, reevaluate our past accomplishments, leadership, those that are more or less eligible to stay on are usually asked if they want to stay on for another 10 years, or they're asked to stay on because they're needed. And if not, they pass their chief titles on to the next one in line, called hereditary chieftainship. After that, they have another swearing ceremonies for the next 10 years.
Nästa viha kowanehest. Tashan kiana des mkia mohe ho. Na enastes na de khomosti howane hetisum. Das de mkia viha de mohona wo hestortes. Na hennesan tachese viha mo. Hva fehe hasti ha ayas nemme de mustaket. No tsoho nemme tat. Hva to te moho stort to. Na med save has med mo kise tas vi ho mo wo hva. he wasum, he was the head done it, just the doesn't know what he asked him, what commit that he wasn't not to him. His don't want to do here, that's. Han må ikke ikke måtte nå vi her. Nå, det næste med det der vi må have det der have sen med det han her når man ikke måtte det var med det var han var have sen han var Heshiana mato hem shemona mato. Henderson, who won him with that gay, that's it, it's dough. No, he should never met that with that cassave more. Not still. David was done the heavens, no matter your Tom done it, or Tom who was done the heavens. Mohan San and no, he was det bevarste mås, när man det skötte och ass, när man det. Det var det överst tajes, när det sköv något. Mot sig han är den där tåse. Det var en ny mål större dörren till var. En ny mål hos oss vi hade för.
The lineage is handed down from father to son on some chief societies, and some is given by members of societies for brave deeds or extraordinary qualities, generous qualities of a person.
The term of a chieftainship is 10 years or a lifetime. A chieftainship is done either by appointment or through hereditary lineage. It is very rare when a chieftainship is done by appointment.
There's no appointments. Sometimes there are exceptions that they can appoint someone that's not in a category of a hereditary qualificationship. They can appoint someone with high standards. This is a rare occasion.
Many are lifetime appointments, and they can resign at any time. They're prepared from childhood. That's why a lot of them cannot talk to their sisters, because sisters and brothers always tend to argue, and you can't belittle them. They're starting to collect their medicine even as a child.
Chiefs must possess many virtues to be a great leader. Some of the virtues are compassion, generosity, patience, and endurance.
Well, he's got to be generous. He's got to be, as I said, humble. He has to have a lot of wisdom. He has to think of the people all the time and not of himself. He has to take part in our ceremonies. He has to be a participant and also an advisor of all of our societies, all of our religious ceremonies. They give guidance. A lot of their virtues have been handed down from generation to generation.
In order to become chief, they have to be good-hearted people. They have to be very ethical individuals. They have to be knowledgeable of our ways, and they have to be committed to maintaining our ways as Cheyenne.
When Sweet Medicine returned from Bear Butte, he brought with him the teachings and the organization of the traditional tribal societies, Kit Fox, Outcord Scrapers, and Dock Soldiers. Today, all of the societies are still active. They participate in the everyday life of the Northern Cheyenne people. We interviewed individuals belonging to several tribal societies. However, a member of one society will not talk for another society. A non-member does not have the right to discuss the details of a society they don't belong to. We will hear from the members of the Kit Fox Society, the Outcord Scraper Society, and the Dock Soldier Society.
When Sweet Medicine came back from the mountain, he came back to the people. He was carrying a pipe, and eagle feathers and mentioned to the people that he brought these 4 societies, chiefs, kid folks, dog soldiers, and elks. These were the first societies.
The societies are really the workers that make sure our ceremonies are going to be held. They help in building the Sundance Arbor or putting up the teepee where those ceremonies are going to be held. And they patrol the camp. They assist throughout the ceremony.
Each society have headsmen and doorkeepers, pipe keepers, and principal society members, similar to chiefs' structure.
Hammosti. Aivan ja muumista. Ammattia estema avu muhtaata kivuon. Hän tasin makaa hitaanen tietysti koko vuostanne hyvät. Naamati vikke puumuhtasta. Ja men nyt tahin te ammatti sitten eva se vaatisti te pevaat. Ja tietysti se että huste hestanne uudesta.
Kid fox, elks, and dog soldiers. They used to call them military societies. The chiefs would appoint these societies.
The Kit Fox Society.
They appoint the kid fox to watch spiritual life, our ceremonies here in our reservation.
The Elkhorn Scrapers Society.
Musta hemo jo kesikkittää että hekki jäsiä mu tässä mut niin siemot niin on ne taamasti taavana no sapu mut niin entä se on ammatti mu kevis tapo se hoitoana vetä nyt snammatti se me it's
The Dog Soldier Society.
The chiefs selected the dog soldiers to lead the tribe to the next campsite. There's 2 doormen that sit on each side of the door. There's a drum keeper. With the dog soldiers, there's 3 headsmen. One is the major one, and then there's headsmen on the left, headsmen on the right. They sit at the head of the teepee. And they have the honorary members, usually older people, that are seated. They have different roles.
The Bureau of Indian Affairs was created under the War Department in 1824. The roles and responsibilities of the Bureau of Indian Affairs have changed over time. The Northern Cheyenne Reservation was established in 1884 by an executive order signed by President Chester A. Arthur. From 1884 to 1934, the Bureau of Indian Affairs provided Indian agents to supervise the Northern Cheyenne Reservation. In 1906, the title of Indian agents changed to superintendents.
Bureau of Indian Affairs was created initially within the War Department as early as 1824. It was basically created to support the Indian agents and what money and what rations went to these tribes. Individuals within the Bureau under the management of the superintendent would basically make all the decisions for the tribes. The role was to maintain the peace, keep Indian people on the reservation, keep track of where they went if they left the reservation, bring them along in terms of domestication, try to bring them from hunter-gatherer into a role of farmer, rancher. And of course the religious aspects of that too. There was a concerted effort to bring the Indian people into Christianity. Their role was to provide service to Indian people, provide technical assistance, protect the trust assets, both the monetary assets, the financial assets, as well as the land, water, air. It's a trust responsibility, and the role then is that of a trustee, and to be held to very high standards in management of those trust resources.
The B.I.A., the Bureau of Indian Affairs, is a trustee for tribal assets. They call them trust assets. Timber would be one, water, any of our natural resources, minerals, etc. Powers of the Tribal Council. About half of our powers are actually subject to the review of the Bureau of Indian Affairs.
It's a federal agency, part of the Interior Department, entrusted with taking care of Indian business, Indian lands, Indian education, Indian probate, Indian everything. They're the ones who sign off on probates and land sales and those laws and ordinances and resolutions that are requiring federal oversight. They approve those or disapprove those. They have deadlines to do all that. They have a trust responsibility.
The Indian Reorganization Act, also known as the Wheeler-Howard Act, was established in 1934.
Timona ho manis tasike wonin mahakse tasnikova. Moinan hanavat have henne förstått tastikhenno. Tima amo man na oa. Mukhe hanavat o muhte sed hote tanawa. Zede shmahen tanawa ist. Na timona fte mekon na vehenne mek. Nehana wollte aste omanisse. Weher omanis das nehana wollte aste dachtes. Aber das dem hamoste man anof nemone dachtano. Na matte das na sine tawa hätte. Weher aufstande was der ist.
The Indian Reorganization Act was to develop not only the tribal government, but also to develop economic development for the tribes. People were asked to vote on it. The tribal members were provided information. Interpreters went from district to district explaining the Constitution and explaining the Northern Cheyenne tribal government as a result of the Indian Reorganization Act. And the people voted on it and accepted the tribal government we have now. The Northern Cheyenne people accepted their constitution. It was passed by the Secretary of the Interior. The Northern Cheyenne Constitution and the corporate charter was signed by the federal government, and it became an official political and governmental structure for the Northern Cheyenne people.
It's the principal guiding document on organizing government. The Northern Cheyenne are actually known as an IRA tribe. Our constitution is based on the Indian Reorganization Act. The act impacted us negatively because it dismissed a traditional form of government that we prospered under, and to replace it with something that hasn't really succeeded to a large degree, even to today. On the positive side, Indian Reorganization Act, for those tribes that have their constitutions based on the IRA, have really firm federal recognition, meaning a lot of our constitutional powers are directly derived, or at least recognized, and therefore endorsed and respected by the federal government.
Congress quit doing Indian treaties, and they wanted Indians to become like farmers, ranchers. So they did these where tribes could take the land base and divide it up among the people.
Northern Cheyenne allotments were pieces of land that enabled the Northern Cheyenne to become farmers and ranchers as a means of self-sufficiency.
Two things were happening. When the tribes would allot, people were getting deeds and selling it. There was millions and millions of acres across this country going out of trust. And so the Wheeler-Howard Act basically said there's going to be no more allotments. The second part of it was also to allow tribes to create governments and constitutions and charters. We're going to let tribes become corporations, sort of a unique type of Indian corporation.
The other pieces of the Wheeler-Howard Act brought a halt to the days of allotting lands. The Act did other things. It gave tribes the right to hire their own legal staff. The IRA Act also brought into place Indian preference.
The Northern Cheyenne Tribal Constitution was established in 1935 as a result of the Indian Reorganization Act of 1934.
Our Constitution establishes three branches of government, executive, legislative, and judicial. The executive branch consists of the president, the vice president, the tribal secretary, and the tribal treasurer. However, the tribal president is unique because he's also elected as a member of the tribal council, which is the legislative body. The duties of the tribal council aren't clearly defined in our Constitution. However, you could assume that many of their enumerated powers under Article 4 would be the closest thing to define duties. They're the legislators of our tribe, meaning they make the laws, they adopt policies. The principal duty of the Northern Cheyenne tribal president is to see that all orders, enactments, and resolutions of the tribal council are properly executed. Basically, the chief executive officer to provide leadership, lead administrator, designated as the chief signatory, and also the spokesperson.
The significance of the tribal constitution brought the tribe into a modern form of government. For the first time, a number of individuals who were elected by the tribal membership and put in a position of management to make decisions for the tribe. That was probably the most significant piece there. And it also brought into place a constitution under which the tribe would operate, and then a corporate charter that they would use to run the business arm of the tribe.
The constitutional amendment of 1960 changed the number of member representation from 100 to 200. The Constitution was unchanged until 1960. When it was amended. One of the critical amendments was it increased the population. It was 200 per member from each of the districts. So each 200 Cheyennes had a representative.
The amendment of the Constitution that took place in 1960 was fairly narrow in scope. It took the number of tribal members that would be represented by a councilman, increased that number from 100 to 200. In the original Constitution, it read that for every 100 tribal members, you would have one representative on the tribal council. Over time, with the population of the tribe expanding, the number of people on the council was getting unmanageable.
The Constitutional Amendment of 1995 instituted the separation of powers. Executive branch, legislative branch, and judicial branch. The amendment also changed the organization of the tribal council. I believe 95, it was amended again. The people voted to amend their constitution, the separation of powers. So they formed the executive branch and the legislative branch and the judicial branch.
The separation of powers clause basically clarifies that there are three distinct branches of government within the Northern Cheyenne tribe: executive, legislative, judicial. And it just states very simply that no one branch of government shall exercise the powers of another branch of government unless expressly authorized in the Constitution.
The other big change was they reduced the tribal council. The 1995 amendment reduced the council to 10 council members, 1 vice president and 1 president. Another important change. They have staggered terms. They're in the office 4 years, as in under the old Constitution. The tribal council served 2 years. The Judicial Branch
Consists of 2 trial judges elected at large on our reservation. They're just the regular trial court. However, there are also provisions in the Separation of Powers Ordinance that defines the courts. There is also an appellate court that can review the trial court's judge rulings. There's also a reference to a peacemaker court. And more recently, we're undertaking an initiative to have a juvenile court as well. The appellate court consists of 3 appellate judges. 2 have to be basically licensed attorneys, member of a state bar, and 1 can be a tribal member. It doesn't require any qualifications except a clean criminal record. We have 2 levels of elections. The first is the primary election and the general election. Primary elections for tribal council are district specific, but for the president, the vice president, and the 2 trial judges, the primary elections are reservation-wide across all 5 districts.
The executive branch would run day-to-day operations. They would propose law. The responsibility of the legislative branch then would be to create law, pass laws and put them in place. The judicial then is to enforce those laws.
The Northern Cheyenne tribe is comprised of 5 districts: Lame Deer, Ashland, Busby, Birney, and Muddy.
Our reservation is 444,000 acres, and it's divided up into 5 districts: Ashland, Birney, Lame Deer, Muddy, and Busby. And they're sectioned off based on community and geography. And in those districts, we of course have specific representatives on the tribal council.
The tribal societies, chiefs, tribal council, and the Bureau of Indian Affairs coexist today. However, the tribal council is the governing body of the Northern Cheyenne tribe.
Nā hate maa pua nista ho manis te hui si am nitu. Nā hate te mona ho manis te ama te sats te pua te hana ni ke hui wona.
So we went from that huge nomadic lifestyle to that tiny reservation. We are an IRA form of government. They are a traditional form of government. If a cultural matter comes up, some of those society people might come and discuss their issues with the president or any of the tribal council. A formal chief, we might call on them to advise on certain matters, but it doesn't happen very often. But we certainly respect when they come to see us. When they talk, we listen. And I think we respect them that way.
The Council of 44 being the oldest form of government, then the B.I.A. came in, and then the Northern Cheyenne tribal government. They're individual institutions with similar goals in the Northern Cheyenne tribe.
Today, the Council of 44 still functions, but their primary role is to having to deal with the spiritual aspects of Cheyenne life.
When you look at the tribal president now, as opposed to the Council of 44, the Council of 44 are the servants of the people, and the tribal chairman we elect, he doesn't serve the people anymore. We serve him. He's the one with the authority. He's the one with the power, and he's the one that says, okay, this is what we want to do to the people. The tribal chairman had to adhere to the Constitution and the policies of the federal government. So he wasn't able to provide the people of the early reservation times what they expected from a chief. So those were really critical changes that were happening, and they were seriously growing pains for the people.
I think the role of the traditional government would be one of maintaining our ties back to our past, maintaining those traditions, documenting those traditions, trying to keep the language in place, instill in the tribal members the rich culture that we do have. It's necessary that we have this contemporary government that's democratic and fast-moving and able to keep up with the rest of the world.
This has been an educational program covering the Cheyenne leadership. This program covered the chief organization, selection process, term of chieftainship, and the virtues for attaining chieftainship, tribal societies, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the Indian Reorganization Act of 1934, the Northern Cheyenne Tribal Constitution of 1935, the Constitutional Amendments of 1960 and 1995, the Northern Cheyenne Reservation districts, Lame Deer, Ashland, Busby, Birney, and Muddy, and the coexistence of the traditional and contemporary governments. The American Indian Tribal Histories Project would like to thank Eugene Little Coyote, Cavin Wilson, Rubie Sooktis, Charles Butch Sooktis, Leroy Pine, Charles Little Old Man, Dr. Henrietta Mann, Keith Beartusk, and Linwood Tallbull for sharing their knowledge of the Northern Cheyenne people.